Thank you very much once more. Cheers.
Yeah, hello and welcome also.
Welcome back, Isabel.
Yes, thank you. So you can see my screen again and you can hear me?
Yes, I see it.
Perfect.
Hear you. So
perfect. Then
I'll let you to your slides so you can continue.
Perfect. Then I'm back for you.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so as Tom already mentioned, I would like to talk a bit about hard seltzer, which is an upcoming trend, and a lot of people in the beverage industry are talking about hard seltzer right now. And that's why we want to have a look what's behind that hype and what is hard seltzer, and how can brewers participate in that trend and also take their share from that upcoming new beverage. So once again, you might already see some parallels to the other presentation. I've also put the presentation in 5 parts. First of all, I would like to show you a bit about the trend. Where is it coming from? Why is hard seltzer so popular at the moment? Then I would like to show you more about the product and the characteristics of that new beverage. And then we will have a closer look into the process details. And the last big question, of course, what is in for the brewer? So how can a brewer participate on that upcoming new thing? So if we're having a look at what is going on in the United States, we have a mega trend, which is actually not only affecting the beverage industry, and this is health style. So people are more aware of the health. They are dressing differently. They are more into sports and also more into healthy food and drinks. And there we have that trend also with less alcohol. So 4 to 5%, what normally beer has, is something that is absolutely in this trend. But people are looking for something that is more healthy, less calories as beer. And that's why hard seltzer was coming up in the United States so much. The product is normally packed in small, convenient volumes. Mostly it is small, slim cans. It's portable, and what is very interesting, it is not a gender, it's a gender neutral trend. So it's not only female or male. Normally the cans are white or clean labeled. So it's more lifestyle product, and it is a non-seasonal trend. So this means sales are taking over the total year, the volumes are quite stable. It's not a new thing. Some of you might know that the flavored alcoholic beverages started to be popular in the 1980s. And actually, it is not much different to what we've seen there in that times. There have been some tax reasons why this was not very successful in all markets. And this is more or less a new start for that type of beverages. And when we have a look at the markets, it is clear that it is not only a one seasonal short peak. So the sales volumes we see in the United States are enormous. So it's a couple of brands that are now established on those markets. And on the left-hand side, if you have a look at those numbers that are forecasted also in the next 3 years, it is enormous. And if you have a look at the market research also for the non-US market, for the rest of the world, it is also all the researchers believe that it's coming over and it's getting bigger and bigger as this ready-to-drink category in general is growing. And you can see here the numbers for the global markets. It's quite huge, and there's one point that is interesting for brewers. Unfortunately, it is taking share from the beer market. And so this is, of course, not an easy situation. On the other hand side, it can also be a chance to enter new markets and with maybe good margin on the products. So let's have a closer look at the market leaders, because if we have a look at the products that are on the market, it's easier to understand what is going on there. You can first of all see, if you have a first look at those products, they all look more or less similar. Those white slim cans. And also, if you have a look at the product characteristics, they are all approximately 5 volume% alcohol and less than 100 calories per can. All of them are gluten-free, and this is basically what the customer is looking for. Yeah. On the German market, it's also, so I can only speak from a customer perspective. Here in the German market, nearly all the bigger stores already have launched some hard seltzer brands. So this is really also coming over to Europe, and we see that in many countries that it starts to take off. So the product is basically, as mentioned, 4 to 5% volume % alcohol. And if you have a look at this, they are crystal clear. So they really look like seltzer. And this is also what the customer is looking for fresh, refreshing drink. There's no color inside. There's no flavor inside before you add that special flavors. And this is actually also something, the range of flavors used for hard seltzer is quite wide. So you can really put in whatever is tasty, and there's a lot possible to do with those drinks. What is interesting from a tax perspective is, especially for the United States, and that's also true for most of the other countries, that if you're using alcohol from a fermentation base, the taxes are like beer, and they are lower than using spirits from distilled processes. So this means if you have a fermentation process and produce an alcohol base from fermentation, the taxes will be less, and of course it is easier to market that, or to bring that to the market. So let's have a closer look how the process can look like. Here in general, we have to say that there are different ways to produce hard seltzer, and the process I'm showing you now is one example for a big greenfield brewery, not a brewery, it's a greenfield hard seltzer production process. And I will also show you in some later slides how to integrate that in an existing brewing process. But just to give you an overview how we are producing hard seltzer typically, we're going to start with a sugar base, a liquid sugar base. And for many hard seltzer producers, this is the way to go, with a sugar base. But this, and this is something to keep in mind, can also be a malt base, can be a wine base. So the raw material you're using, you're quite free in what you want to use. So if we start here in the middle, it's actually the sugar intake and the total raw material processing. And as mentioned, it is all a fermentation process. So this means we have everything you also know from the brew house. We have a thermal wort treatment if you want, not everybody is using that, and a cooling step afterwards. We have an oxygenation or aeration step to support the growth of the yeast later on. Here we have process water tanks, and continue that process here with yeast. Normally fermentation processes, and I will show you a typical fermentation diagram in a later detail. So fermentation is high, so this means a targeted alcohol volume is, for example, 20 volume % alcohol. So this means most time we have dry yeast here and only use them once, because after that the yeast is so stressed that you cannot use that a second time. So this means we have a yeast hydrator here. And then we come to that area that really looks like a fermentation cellar. So this is the cellar piping. This can, for example, be a matrix piping, can also be a valve manifold. So this really depends on what cellar requirements you have. And what you can see inside the tanks is a lance. And I mentioned that already with the Hopstar presentation. This is a liquid jet mixer, which we can use here to support the fermentation. Some more details will follow in a later step. Okay, so we are doing the total fermentation in here. And then we, of course, need to separate yeast. And therefore, we are using Westphalia centrifuges. So what you also know from a brewery, to get out the yeast, you can use here the centrifuges. And then we come to an interesting new step, what we normally don't have in a brewery. And this is the total step of actually decoloring and deflavoring, because the base we want to have now is a clear base without any flavor or any more aroma here, because the aroma comes in a later step. And this is membrane technology. And you heard from Torben already that there are also some dual purpose uses with the dealcoholization. And I will go into some details of the membrane filtration step as well. What we're getting out of that membrane filtration step is then actually a clear liquid with alcohol and no taste. And that's why we have to add the taste. And here we are coming into the total area of mixing and blending. There's some options, batch mixing, inline blending. So there's a lot you can do. And we will go into some details as well. And after that, mixing and blending, we are carbonating that beverage and it is ready to pack. So you see, in general, it's quite an easy process. And what, in my opinion, makes it really nice is that the base that comes in here can be variable. So you can here use brewhouse equipment, for example, for the fermentation, if you want to have a cereal base. So that's why we've also decided to have a look at that process in modules. So I was talking about makeup of fermentable sugars. So this is this total area of raw material handling, but also to make that fermentable sugar available. And this can, for example, be a brewhouse also. Fermentation, decoloring, deflavoring, mixing and blending, and filling and packaging. But you can see you can also come with a beer base. Then you just need the later steps of the process, like mixing or blending, for example. Okay, so let's go into some details of the process. So first of all, there's a total bunch of products that fit into that hard seltzer production. And as already mentioned a few times, it really depends where you're coming from and how large your volumes are that you want to produce. We are, for small craft brewer, able to support you with small unit or small skids to complete your existing process to produce hard seltzer. And on the other hand side of the range, we have the equipment to build a total greenfield production facility for hard seltzer, including all the raw material handling, packaging, and things like that. So here, a clear invitation, if you're interested in that hard seltzer topic, we can be a partner for you to really design the total process from A to Z. And there's a lot of flexibility in the process, and we're happy to support you there with also some technology know-how. Let's see some details and some examples what you can do. And let's start with the total fermentation area and the makeup of the fermentable sugar. I've added an example for you, a best practice example for base fermentation from the United States. And you can see here that the fermentation is starting with a very high sugar content and takes approximately 8 to 10 days, 12 days. That depends a bit. And beside choosing the right yeast and the right yeast food, there are also some things that you can do from an equipment perspective to support that fermentation. And this is actually a bit of a tough fermentation task that we have here. So we need to really have a lot of alcohol in a short time. So I mentioned those 20 volume % alcohol, which are normally target for that fermentation. So this is a tough job for the yeast to do. And our liquid jet mixing system, for example, can support that because it helps you, especially in the beginning of the fermentation, to support that the yeast cells are moving in the tank, and also during the rest of the fermentation. It helps us to keep the total system in motion and to finish the fermentation, especially in a later step, and have the best results here. We know from some of our customers that they can reduce fermentation time also with that system, so they can finish the fermentation faster than without using a dynamic system in the tank. Okay, so then let's have a look at what happens with membrane filtration. And here you've already seen that Aroma Plus reverse osmosis plant. And here is really the question, what quality of the base do you want to have? Because we can use variable stages of membrane filtration here to get different qualities of the base. So for some qualities, a single stage membrane filtration step is already enough to clean and to polish that fermentation product. But if you want to be a bit more, a bit higher in quality, you can also use multiple membrane filtration steps. And some production facilities additionally use a final polishing step with a carbon filtration step at the end for polishing that. So there's quite a lot of flexibility also in that membrane filtration step. And we are here also happy to talk about the different options we have with you in detail. To get some basic understanding for you, so microfiltration, ultrafiltration, nanofiltration, and reverse osmosis. The main difference is actually what goes through those membranes. So this means if we are talking about hard seltzer, we are normally in that area of nanofiltration and reverse osmosis, as we want to get out the residual sugars that are still in that fermentation product, and we want to get out all the taste and all the color of that base. And a bit the same, like already mentioned by Torben, we have the option here to have that operated in batch mode with a final deafiltration step to increase the yield of alcohol. And on the other hand side, we also have the option here to go with a continuous plant. So you can here see in both examples, we have an alcoholic malt base. And this is 10 up to 20 volume % alcohol. It's filtered and goes then through that membrane filtration plant. And in this continuous plant, we have a deafiltration step in the later part of the membrane. And the product then can directly be used for the hard seltzer production then. As mentioned before by Torben, the best thing to convince you is to show you some results or the plant itself. And here are some examples of a membrane filtration step where we have used a malt base. And here you can see the permeate of the nanofiltration and the reverse osmosis. And you can see if we're talking about a crystal clear and colorless product, this is exactly what we want to have. Okay, so then another important point on that is the mixing and blending. And here we have the option on the one hand side to do a batch mixing process, on the other hand side to go for inline blending. This really depends on the demands you have in your facility. But one point I want to stress here is on the one hand side that we have the option to process all those different packaging materials you might have in that. So this can be a drum, a can be bottles, can be big bags, or something that you have to solve. So there's a lot of flexibility also in that. And actually, what we need to know in projecting such a plant is actually just the flavors you want to have inside here. And the difference between the batch mixing and the inline blending is also depending on your demands and also the volume you have, which one is best for you. But in general, we have both available. We have a closer look at those systems. We, for example, have the D-batch system for the batch mixing, which is a modular system with very high flexibility, and it also helps you to make the most out of the raw materials. And on the other hand side, this is how a decon inline blending system can look like. So we have here the possibilities to have a continuous larger scale mixing solution with multi-component liquid products that we are adding to our product. And what is very important here is dosing accuracy. And just to give you a short example, if we have a dosing, for example, with a final product specification of 10-degree Brix, you normally have a range within your specification. And in this example, which is a real one from the beverage industry, we have a dosing accuracy, or not a dosing accuracy, a final product specification accuracy of plus minus 0.15 degree Brix. And if we have a look at the achievable dosing ranges, we are better than 0.25% per dosed component. And if we are talking about that 10-degree Brix solution, it's 0.025 degree Brix. And the point on this is actually that if your dosing accuracy is so much better than the final product specification, you have two options. Either you can be very sure that your product specification and your product quality is very good, or you even have the possibility to set down the dosing point, as within the guaranteed specification, you still will reach always a value that is within specification. And if you, for example, producing 200,000 hectoliters a year with 30 cents per kilogram of the glucose syrup, this can be a significant saving if you have a very accurate dosing system that you are using here. And the question is now, of course, how can we reach that dosing accuracy? And for the inline blending, we are, for example, using digital controller technology here, which is much better in the accuracy that we normally have in analog technology. So the systems are really very sophisticated in their dosing accuracy. Okay, so this was a quick and rough overview, first of all, about the process and the technical details. And there are, of course, there's much more to tell you about every single product we are using here within such a. But I think that this would be too much for today. But if there's a specific product you're interested in to learn more about, please get in contact, and we will, of course, provide you more information about, for example, sugar solving or matrix piping of the cellar, all these parts. We're happy to support you with more information. What I would like to show you now to finish my presentation is, so what is in it for the brewers? So what can we do as a brewer with that trend? And I was telling you already that hard seltzer is taking share from the beer market, which is not a very nice information for a brewer. But on the other hand side, it is a trendy new product that is on the market, and this also has some potential for good margin on those markets. And what I would like to show you is that with not much effort, you can also produce hard seltzers on your existing brewery equipment. And I mentioned that modular approach that we are normally using for those hard seltzer plants, and this is exactly what it is. So the major part will be the membrane filtration part. And as mentioned, there are also options for dual use here, or different stages, how fancy you design that equipment to produce that. But if we're having a look at this total process part, so the brew house, for example, the wort cooling, the aeration, most parts are already there in a brewery. Also the yeast handling, for example, is something that many brewers already are able to do in their existing facilities. And also the fermentation part. So an existing fermentation cellar is in most ways capable to also produce those bases for hard seltzer. And if you, for example, already produce shanty or any beer mix drinks, so you might already have parts of the blending or mixing and blending part that can be adapted for the hard seltzer production as well. So to say it in the words of our US colleagues, it's not that hard to produce hard seltzer, and we're happy to support you if you're interested in launching such a product, or if you're interested in entering that market. We're happy to support you with our experience on that market, and we're also happy to support you with all the information, how you can modify your existing production facility, and how you can also do that in a craft style. Okay, so that's all from my side for now. And once again, if there are any questions for now, I'm happy to answer them now. If you have questions later, please feel also free to ask me via email. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, Isabel, thank you very much. It's interesting new product to hear that came out. It's not very good news that it's taking part of our share on the market.
That's unfortunately true, yes.
Yeah, it's very bad. But it's good to know, so you know how you can adjust and try to find the way how to overcome it or how to join that market. So thank you very much for your help and for your nice presentation. And as I said, I will forward to you all the questions we can get.
Yes, please.
Out of
please.
our fellows. So I have to thank you now for your presentation and for your time. And I would like to thank you to all GEA team for all these morning presentations we had it. It was very interesting for me. I hope for the others. And